All right, everybody. I'm excited to share with you some of my final thoughts on this 2-year adventure we've been on. I still have a lot more reflecting to do, but I'm excited to share some of what I've summarized so far. So, key course findings. The first one that has emerged, and I feel kind of silly saying this, but positive, healthy relationships. I think I knew this all along, but it took through this program for me to articulate it and maybe get validation for this. But positive, healthy relationships between student and educators is extremely important for their success in the classroom. But these relationships are actually really important for everybody, for teacher to teacher, teacher to admin, families and teachers, collaborative teachers, all of these positive, healthy interactions and relationships with one another are ultimately going to benefit the student. I even think here in this cohort, we are having a lot of, positive, healthy relationships that are helping us as educators grow, which then affects our students' growth as well. I've also, through the course of this program, just realized that differentiation comes in so many forms. There's not one way to do it. And I'm also super happy to know that differentiation does not mean creating an IEP for each student, but there's so many ways to differentiate. But I truly feel that authentic differentiation is going to come by knowing your students, knowing what they need, and figuring out how to appropriately differentiate. There's so many options to do that. It could be through the multiple intelligences, getting to know your students and using the multiple intelligences to produce or learn or show their success. We could also use tiered assignments and grouping. Allowing for student choice can be highly motivating and a very easy form of differentiation. There's technology out there. There's so many ways to differentiate. It just, I think, comes down to what do your students need? How well do you know them to know what they need? Because there's so many different pieces we get to pull from our toolbox. There's not just one we get to use. We can use so many different ones to benefit our students. And lastly, reflection as a tool for instruction. Primarily here, I'm thinking of teachers reflecting on their practice to better their instruction. I think it's necessary for successful instruction. Educators can reflect to improve their practice and uncover their own biases. I think we are learning a lot about that right now with everything that's happening in the world. We can differentiate on our differentiation practices to make those better, to ensure we're thinking about all of our student needs. We could do it on inclusion strategies. Are we being inclusive to all students? I think there's so many areas for reflection within being the realm of being a teacher that we can always be reflecting and learning from these experiences to ultimately benefit our students. Okay, so my research question was, what are effective strategies in mathematics education to develop foundational skills at the primary level? Obviously, math is important forever, but it's super important that when kids are little babies, that we are helping them grow with these awesome, solid, concrete, conceptual ideas of math so that they can flourish as time goes on and not get further and further behind because of gaps that they've missed. Okay, so using culturally relevant instruction can be really helpful in mathematics. Getting to know your students, having that relationship with students and parents and families, getting to know them to figure out how to best teach them. Learning about their cultural experiences and backgrounds can help us include that into our instruction. So here's a very simple example of that. A lot of young black girls wear hair beads. So this is an example from one of the research studies where a teacher used these hair beads that these girls are very familiar with because they wear them in their hair to learn counting. Just using something as simple as something from their everyday lives to connect that counting piece to can be extremely beneficial. Second one, positivity and knowledge equals confidence. We as teachers must have positive attitudes towards our material, regardless of whether we like it or not. But that attitude is going to transfer to our students, and they're going to pick up on that, and that is going to then affect their experience with the material. So if I say, okay, kids, today we're going to learn about addition, kids are probably more likely to be engaged than saying, okay, We're learning addition today. Something simple that can really affect kids, but positivity combined with content knowledge. So we, especially as elementary educators, are expected to be general specialists. We are supposed to know so much about math, science, reading, writing, and then teach it all to our students. So it's really important that we understand what we're teaching in order to successfully teach our students, because when we understand what we're teaching, we're naturally building confidence, and that contributes to student learning. So when you're positive about the material and you know what you're doing, you're naturally going to be confident in teaching this, which will greatly reflect in student learning. And lastly, I pulled out just a few instructional strategies that are extremely helpful in early math with young kids. So there's the concrete, pictorial, abstract model. It's a very specific model that includes all different types of learning: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and it's a series. It's like a progressional strip that helps students understand math concepts better. So for example, we can see here that we start with concrete, actual physical manipulatives to understand 2 plus 1. Then we move to creating a picture of it to transfer that concrete knowledge to the pictorial knowledge. And then eventually we're expecting students to put numbers in there and think abstractly about the numbers. But in order to get to this abstract step, we really need to focus on the concrete, the physical touch stuff that the students are doing to help them build these concepts. How are we moving it to pictorial options and then to abstract? These will significantly help students learn math. Okay, meaningful math talks are also extremely important when we're conversing with students about math. Their potential to learn increases significantly, and helping them understand mathematical concepts. So an example would be a teacher could simply ask a student, "What number does my card say?" It's a very low conceptual math conversation. Or I can show a student a picture of 5 goldfish, ask them to tell me how many there are, and then I can ask them, how many more do I need to get to 10? These types of conversations and discourse can really help contribute to student learning. And lastly, structured play is really important and meaningful to young students. Through thoughtfully planned and structured or designed play opportunities, students can naturally learn mathematical concepts, and they're naturally engaging, which tends to increase student learning. Here's an example of a structured play opportunity where students are physically moving along the number line. Okay, and my final reflections on the course. So for future studies and application, I feel how I want to advocate for research. I want to first be able to help others find credible sources and how to find useful research to improve their practice now that I've had experience with that. I think I would also like to participate in future research studies, now knowing how important they are, what their purposes are. Now I have more confidence knowing what I'm could be getting myself into, and how it can truly help. And lastly, I'd love to eventually conduct my own research in the future, probably related to mathematics and young learners. Some topics of interest would be learning math through play, very similar to that very last slide I showed you. And with everything that's been happening in the current state of the world, I'm really curious now about systemic inequalities in the education system. I think there's so many questions out there still that we have to answer, and it's really exciting to think about. Okay, personal applications. The first one is that through reflection, I think reflection can help me in my personal life too. I've been talking about it here, that it's important for our professional practice, but I'm thinking, where can I reflect in my own personal life to continue to be a better contributor to society? Because through this reflection comes growth. And right now I'm thinking a lot about my privilege. How can I reflect on that and act upon that to make the world a better place? And what about my interactions with people? How can I reflect on that to make myself a better human being? Okay, I also plan to focus on relationships. I talked about how important they are between teacher to teacher, student to teacher, teacher to family, but I also think knowing that students benefit from these relationships with others, it's important that I do too, with maybe people in my community, with friends and family, just focusing on those relationships for everybody's benefit. And lastly, I am a lifelong learner. Through this program, I felt reignited to continue to learn new things. Obviously, there's so many professional things I want to continue to learn, but right now I am learning how to paint rocks, and forever I will be continuing to improve my Spanish. Professional applications. The first one is that I really want to become a better advocate. We've talked a lot about throughout courses in this program that advocating for our students, their families, what their needs are. This is something I can do to best serve them. I also plan to really focus on family engagement, specifically with my students who are living on Lake Street right now. I think my relationships with families can really benefit everybody, to get them the help that they need, to become an ally, and to make school a positive experience for everybody involved. Um, and lastly, through reflection again, I plan to continually reflect on my instruction. I'm going to use the Making Differentiation a Habit, the HECOC text, regularly to reflect on my own practices and differentiation. But I also want to expand my reflections and look into mental health needs, more into family engagement, and reflect on my inclusion practices. So, my concluding statement. Through the course of the MA program, I have learned that I valued relationships without realizing it. The program has helped me articulate my passion and stance on the importance of positive and healthy relationships. I have learned to make decisions more slowly and thoughtfully through reflection and discussion. As educators, we must adapt our mindsets and practices to best serve all students. And lastly, I also just want to say thank you to cohort 865. It's been really fun learning with you all over the past 2 years. Speaking of relationships and reflections, I've been really grateful to be with all of you over the course of the past 2 years. Thank you for all the feedback, the meaningful discussion, pick-me-ups, all of that. Thank you to everyone. And congratulations, we're here at the end. And here are my references.